There's a certain kind of anger that never raises its voice. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't blow up your phone at midnight. It just goes quiet. And somehow the quiet is louder than anything else in the room. Picture this. They've agreed to go to dinner with you. Already at the door, keys in hand. And that's the exact moment. Not 5 minutes ago, not 5 minutes from now, that they suddenly can't find their wallet. They check the same pockets twice, unhurried, glancing at you with a completely neutral face. No apology, no urgency. Just the faint impression, somehow, that this is your fault for rushing. Or the email they promised by Friday. You don't mention it over the weekend. Monday, they finally send it, but with one specific thing missing. The detail you'd asked about 3 times. When you bring it up, they tilt their heads slightly. I didn't realize that was important to you. They remembered. They always remember. And here's what makes this particular kind of anger so disorienting. There's nothing to grab onto, no raised voice to respond to, no accusation you can actually defend against. Just this slow grinding sensation somewhere behind your sternum that something is wrong, mixed with the maddening possibility that you might be imagining all of it. That feeling has a name, ambient hostility, but the term doesn't mean much when you're standing in the hallway and everything inside you has gone tight. It's a specific kind of poison. It makes you question your own perception before you even get to the thought, wait, why are they doing this to me? You freeze. You try to figure out whether you imagined it. And that's exactly the point. That's the whole thing. Here's what nobody tells you about people who operate this way. Most of them are genuinely terrified. Not of you, of what would happen if the anger inside them ever found a direct exit. Because somewhere in their history, direct anger wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a threat to survival. The term passive-aggressive was first used by the US military in 1945 to describe soldiers who expressed resistance not through defiance but through sabotage, delays, deliberate incompetence. The military called it a discipline problem. What took researchers decades to understand is that this wasn't a choice. When a child grows up somewhere that punishes "I'm angry," not sometimes, but consistently, the nervous system doesn't stop generating the feeling. It just reroutes it. The emotion goes underground, finds other exits, ones that look, from the outside, like nothing at all. Research published in the Journal of Personality Assessment found this pattern strongly correlated with environments where emotional expression was met with punishment or simply ignored. Scott Wetzler, who spent years studying this clinically, described it as chronic low-grade hostility, wrapped in a veneer of compliance. But here's the thing that almost never gets said about any of this. It's a funeral. There was a version of this person, younger, more open, who once tried to say the direct thing, who said, "That hurt," or "I don't want to," or just, "I'm angry." And something happened in response that taught them, with quiet finality, that honesty was not safe. So they buried it. Not dramatically, just incrementally, over years, until the anger stopped even announcing itself to them. It just moved sideways automatically. What was lost in that isn't just communication. It's a relationship with their own interior life. They grieve something they can't even name because they simply don't remember what it felt like to be different, what it felt like to not run every word through an internal security check before letting it out. And since then, everything has been, well, fine, kind of. On paper, things look okay, but only on paper. But let's be honest. If you recognized yourself somewhere in that description, this next part is going to be uncomfortable, because behind all that reasonableness, there's something else. The passive-aggressive person doesn't experience themselves as hostile. They experience themselves as the accommodating one, the one who never makes scenes, never starts fights, keeps things together when everyone else falls apart. And in a narrow sense, that's even accurate. What they genuinely cannot see, and this is what makes the pattern so difficult to break, is that it's strange. This combination of outward willingness and some kind of muffled resistance underneath. Like the person is physically in the room. You can see them, hear them breathing, but there's no way to actually reach them. They're here and simultaneously not here. They agree, but their yes carries the same weight as a no, except it hurts more. Leon Seltzer calls this the covert contract. The irony is that the other party was never told it existed. An unspoken arrangement where the passive-aggressive person agrees internally to tolerate things they're not okay with, without saying anything, expecting the other person to somehow sense their discomfort and adjust. The other person is just living their life, not knowing they've already broken the terms of an agreement they never signed. And every time they inevitably miss the unsaid thing, the tab grows. Here's the lie at the center of all of this. The most convincing one. The one that's been running quietly in the background for years. By not saying the angry thing, they're protecting the relationship. They're not. But that belief is so structurally important to how they understand themselves that touching it feels like pulling a keystone from an arch. So it stays, and the relationship slowly hollows out around it. The partner who keeps hitting a wall of vague resistance eventually stops trying to get through. Not dramatically, they just stop asking certain things. The friend who receives that slightly too sharp remark every time they share something vulnerable eventually stops sharing vulnerable things. Nobody leaves. Nothing explodes. The passive-aggressive person, who never once started a fight, watches the closeness drain away and genuinely doesn't understand why. Therapists sometimes call this emotional exile, not a rupture, just the slow retreat of everyone who got tired of not being able to reach them. What lives under all of this, at the bottom, is a question about power, or the absence of it. Passive aggression emerges wherever someone learned they don't have the right to take up direct emotional space. Direct anger requires a belief, foundational, almost physical, that you can say what you mean and still be okay afterward, that the relationship can hold your honesty. When that belief was never built, or was actively dismantled, the only power available goes sideways. They can't say no, but they can make yes feel like something else entirely. The healing, when it comes, isn't a communication technique, not a script for the difficult conversation. It's slower than that. It's building internal evidence, gradually, that saying the true thing doesn't end everything. That anger, expressed directly, can be survived by both people. That "I'm hurt" is something a person can actually say out loud. For someone who's spent decades living inside this pattern, that evidence has to be gathered against years of proof that pointed the other direction. It takes time, and usually someone willing to stay in the room while it happens. They're not cruel. They're people whose survival once required a set of rules that made complete sense. In a place that no longer exists, the armor kept them safe. And now the armor is the problem. If this feels familiar, the silence that presses down on you, or the armor that's grown too tight, then we're here for a reason. We try to work through the things people usually stay quiet about. If that means something to you, stay. Subscribe if you feel understood here. There's still a lot we need to talk about.